Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I am going to have a conversation with the Honourable Mr. John Abbott. Mr. Abbott, hello. Thank you for coming out.
Oh, certainly my pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So we've only got like 10 minutes. So first I need to make sure that I get your title right, and that could take the first half, so I apologize. You are the Minister of Children, Seniors, and Social Development, responsible for the community sector.
Absolutely.
So, when you were a young boy growing up, how did you know that's what you wanted to grow up to be? Because that's a big encompassing thing.
Well, that's interesting, but we had moved neighborhoods back when I was 9 or 10 years old, 9 years old, and from our house we could see the Confederation building daily.
So you grew up with that
and
kind
I was
of view.
Always curious as to what went on in that building, and pursued that. And my first paid job was to sell tickets for the Corner Brook Lottery, and we set up our stall in the Confederation building.
That's interesting.
Because I said, there are a lot of people up there, so maybe I can make some money, and that was in high school.
Yeah. Well, we're not here to talk about politics today. However, you did say that you grew up wondering what went on in that building. I still wonder sometimes what goes on in that building, but just as a little bit of humor, I know our government always does what it can. We're here to talk about Volunteer Week and volunteerism in general. Now, a lot of people don't realize that a great deal of what happens here on Rogers Television is all volunteerism. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think that's a very good point. People don't really appreciate or know or understand or just think about what volunteers do. We have in this province over 200,000 people who volunteer that we can sort of document.
Hold on, let me do the math on the, in the province that we can document. So people who are registered with individual organizations as volunteers, over 200,000. Yes. And what's our current population?
Just over 500,000.
So we're at 40+%.
Yes, and nationally it could even be a bit higher. So some of the statistics that have been kept. So it's a very vibrant and important aspect of our economy. And there are what I would call the formal volunteers. Then we have the informal volunteers who help out a neighbor, help out a friend, those kinds of things. And again, that's everybody can, I guess, could be categorized in that area. So we know that in youth, late teens, early 20s, are the highest percentage of volunteers in the community. A lot of times they're doing that to support their academic pursuits and also helping on the resume in terms of, look, where future employers may be looking for, what did you do besides your academics? Yeah. Well, I volunteered.
And what's interesting about that is because the motivation originally might be like, okay, well, I want to get into school, I want to get accepted for this program, and I'm going to apply for these jobs, and I want them to know that I'm a good person, so I'm going to volunteer. And that might be the original motivation. But then when you get into it, it has its own very positive and powerful feedback loop.
Absolutely.
How you feel about what you've done in the moment as you watch it happen. Brings you back into doing it again.
Yes.
And then it stops being about where can I go to school and what can I get a job at.
I agree wholeheartedly with that analysis. I was at the Memorial University's Student Volunteer Bureau event for volunteers earlier this week, and it was just fantastic to hear and meet the volunteers, student volunteers, and the nature of the volunteer work they're doing. The breadth of it, the magnitude of it, and that the university celebrates it, and it's a partnership between the university students' office and the students' union, and that started over 40 years ago. So there's been a lot of stuff happening in and around Memorial University over the last number of weeks, and we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of it, and there's always, it feels like, and I sympathize with the people who are going through the struggles of trying to identify what the most important parts for them are, but sometimes you might have the same or a crossover of people who are fighting for a higher quality of education, but at the same time fighting for newer, well-maintained buildings, but then also fighting for really low tuitions, and it's hard sometimes for all of those things to go together. So there's a plight there that's hard. But
adding a massive level of volunteerism to that structure, at least from the student life perspective, that's got to be massively impactful.
I would agree, and the important thing for me that I took away for all the things you just said is that they can stay focused on their volunteer activity, because it's easy to get sidetracked or ask, well, why am I doing this when the whole university community seems to be in disarray, or there's lots going on. But they're stayed very focused on the volunteerism and something that they know that they can bring forward in their life. And then when you flip it to the other end of the age spectrum, our seniors, most who over 65, over 70, they put in the most hours per volunteer.
Interesting.
And so they're doing everything, whether it's religious groups to community bake sales to I was at the Waterford Lions Club there on the weekend, working within the Waterford community, as it were, and they're putting in a lot of hours working with people who have mental health illness, and
so this is so fascinating to me.
Very important to see that happen.
And it really comes around to what we were talking about, because we have the highest percentage of people in the younger age groups, say like sub 18, that the highest percentage of people who volunteer. And sometimes they're motivated in, this sounds bad, but selfish reasons, because they're thinking about the next stages of their life. Then they go into those stages of their life and they accomplish whatever their goals are, or they don't, or they, however it works out. And then as they're seniors, they give most of their time to that same cause without the selfish motivation of what comes next. Yeah. And I think that there's got to be no way to really refute that there's a lesson learned across that path about what brings a sense of contentment.
And I think if you look at the youth in terms of why they might be initially involved in volunteerism, because of academic requirements, what have you, or to, as I say, fill out the resume. But I think once they cross over that threshold and become immersed in volunteer activity, I think the self-motivated piece, or the selfish motivated piece, however you want to describe it, I think then that disappears, and then it's the cause, it's why I'm here. How am I supporting a youth or an elderly person or somebody with a disability, whatever they
Which is
take
also
on.
Still selfish, because you feel good about the fact that you did it. And it's hard to argue that you ever do something for somebody else only for the other person.
Certainly gratification motive, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I know in my experience in the volunteer activities that I've been involved in over the years, I've tried to bring my administrative governance skills to the organizations that I've been involved in, but keeping focused on what is the objective? Well, the objective is to support the community, people in the community, so that they can have better health, better well-being, whatever the case may be. A lot of my work has been in mental health, but it's really support organizations that are really on the front lines to help people, and volunteers can really make a significant difference to those organizations. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you very much, Minister Abbott. Ladies and gentlemen, Volunteer Week. Check out the Community Sector Council, see if it's something for you, and we'll be right back after this. And welcome back to Out of the Fog. I would like to introduce you to a man who undoubtedly has a lot of stories, don't you? For sure. This is Mr. Gerard Brennan. Gerard, thanks for coming to say hello. You are the tournament director of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment Memorial High School Hockey Tournament, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so to give people a little bit of context, yes, it's a high school hockey tournament. Let's talk about its inception, because you're 6-8 years in, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Somewhere around there. So let's talk about its inception, and then we can talk about its connection to the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, and perhaps your connection to the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, and then just give people an idea of what this whole thing is about, because it's a great story.
Oh yeah, so the tournament actually started in 2016. It was John Lee was the coach of Holy Spirit High School boys team at the time, and they wanted to host an invitational tournament. 2016 being the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Beaumont Hamel and a significant battle there. They wanted to link that tournament or their tournament to the regiment and commemorate that piece. So.
The timing made sense.
The timing
100
made
years, if
perfect sense. Yeah.
And John also played for Team Newfoundland in the Canada Games way back when.
There you go. That's something I didn't know about John.
Yeah. So they're very Newfoundlandish.
Yeah, absolutely. So John, they took it on and ran with it. They decided to call it the Beaumont Hamel Cup and the Beaumont Hamel Championship Series, Trail of the Caribou Championship Series, what they refer to it, and. So that was where it started at, and of course they invited, I don't know how many teams back in 2016, probably 12 teams or so, mainly local teams, not much for not past the Pynn, Trinity Bay Peninsula, that sort of area, right, as far as they went out. In coming up with the awards and designs, John reached out to the Regiment to see if they could help them identify some awards and give them the history piece and that sort of stuff. So that's how the Regiment really came on board.
The Trail of the Caribou, like that's like, so to give people a context, the caribou, the head of a caribou and its antlers are on the Royal Newfoundland insignia. That's the insignia, the crest.
Yes.
And so the trail of the caribou leading to the gold medal championship cup.
Yes.
The Beaumont Hamel Cup.
Yes.
That's a clever little play on words. I like that.
Yeah. So really, the Trail of the Caribou, as most people probably already know, is that it recognizes the key battle pieces that the regiment fought in during World War I. Started at Beaumont Hamel. Well, actually started in Gallipoli, where the regiment's first engagement was. Beaumont Hamel, Manchee, Menhirs, Courtrai. Goudencourt, those are some of the key battles. And so with those key battles there, we focused on the awards centered around that whole Trail of the Caribou piece as we refer to it now.
So it's a really great branding piece, really. Like, it's such a good story. And of course, you mentioned Beaumont Hamel. Yep. A lot of people would relate that, of course, to the Battle of the Somme. And where the memorial part, in a lot of ways, comes to the name of this tournament.
Yes, that's right.
So can we talk about, because Canada Day is worth celebrating, it is a thing.
Yep.
But long before it was Canada Day in our province, it was Memorial Day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the word came down shortly after that battle of the loss that the Newfoundland Regiment suffered. I get emotional when I speak about it all the time.
It's a big one.
But the loss of the soldiers, Newfoundland soldiers, World War I. So in Newfoundland, you're right. In Newfoundland, it's Memorial Day, and we recognise and cherish the loss of those soldiers. And then we celebrate Canada Day in the afternoon, and get on and celebrate the fact that we're part of such a great country.
Yes, of course.
In Canada, So. Yeah, so that's that really is a major sticking point for most Newfoundlanders. Really come out July 1st, recognize that, and then get on with celebrations in the afternoon. Yeah.
To be a reservist, with parental permission, you can be 16 years old, or you can enlist yourself at 17.
At 17, yes.
And that's kind of like a part-time military job in some ways.
It's a great part-time job.
Yeah.
I tell you, some of the benefits certainly is, it's a paid job, paid function. They're recruiting now, as a matter of fact. Soldiers in the first 5 years are pretty well guaranteed a full summer's employment, from May, June on up until the end of August. There's tuition fees, grants, bursaries, that sort of stuff available to the soldiers that are attending university. Many opportunities to deploy overseas as they get older. I mean, once they get over the age of 18, they can serve overseas in different deployments. They can serve Newfoundlanders in Igor, for example, and Snowmageddon, and they were out there.
There's a lot of stories, a lot of people too.
They were out helping the people locally, and we've served as far across the country as well in the ice storms of Ontario and some of the floods in Western Canada.
And in a whole lot more selfish way, it looks great on your resume, for one, that you've got military service, and also, if you're 16 or 17 or even 18 years old and you're a reservist and you're in the Royal Newfoundland Regiment and you play hockey, You can play in your own high school hockey tournament.
You can play in your own high school hockey tournament.
kinda cool.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, we did have a couple of soldiers that were in that situation. We were
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
a couple of years ago. Soldier was serving in the regiment, actually played for the Corner Brook Titans high school in this tournament. And we've got great, regimental connection across the island and all these high school players.
So it's from April the 24th to the 30th, and played in Paradise at a double ice complex.
At the double ice complex.
And this is it's a spectator welcome kind of event.
Absolutely.
So where can people go to get access to go see some of these games?
So, so the game is open to the public. We start, I haven't got the schedule right here in front of me, but tournament starts Monday around 3 in the afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So just head on down, check out the schedule,
head on
get your
down.
tickets.
It's $5 admission for adults. Children, kids under 12 are free. Both
And of course,
surfaces
you can
alone.
get yourself some stadium fries.
You can get your
What more
stadium
could you want?
fries. We'll have we will actually have a kit shop there, so there'll
Incredible.
be some swag there from the regimental perspective.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Brennan. Great to have you on. It's a worthwhile cause. The Royal Newfoundland Regiment Memorial High School Hockey Tournament, April the 24th to the 30th. We will be right back after this. Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I don't often say this. People use the word character to describe a person or a character, but this time I actually mean there's a couple of characters here that I want to introduce you to. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. So we have Kit Sora and David Pynn. You're both with Sci-Fi on the Rock, which is coming up real soon, this coming weekend.
Yeah.
Kit, you are the the sponsorships.
Sponsorships.
Yeah, coordinator. So you help
Yeah.
look for people who might want to be involved and help this happen, because there's a lot of volunteerism that happens.
A lot of
at
volunteering, a lot of
Sci-Fi.
funding. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And David, you are with outside coordination, like projects outside of the event itself.
Yes, I do
Right.
things like charity and help out in the community and stuff like that. And I help out with sponsorships too sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
you.
So, Sci-Fi on the Rock. In a few words, what is it?
Magical.
Magical. It's magical.
Fantastical. It's
Everything?
everything, nothing. It's a community.
Okay.
It's a beautiful thing that just sort of brings people from everywhere together over a common
Like
thing.
Fantasy, sci-fi, just about any other
Costumes.
fandom that you would think of. People who just like the costume.
Yeah, it's expanded a lot in the years.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, because we were talking just in the green room before, the lights turned on and we started to film things, that there was a time when you could discuss cosplay, fandom, sci-fi, even horror, comic book, like that whole thing as a subculture.
Yeah.
And it's sort of permeated to a degree now where it's almost dismissive to refer to it as a subculture, because it's so much more mainstream.
It's all
It is
consuming.
a lot more mainstream than when I was first a teenager, let me tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Because you can dress as Captain Steve, Captain American. You can go out and you can go through the mall now, and that experience would be, if you just randomly left today and went and walked through the mall. What would that experience be like for you?
There would be a lot of people wanting pictures taken with me. There would be a lot of excited kids and adults.
And if we were to go back 5, 10 years, what would that experience have been like?
10 years ago, people would probably just stop and stare a bit.
Just weird looks.
They would be like, just wondering what was on the go, or some people would make fun. But now
Yeah.
it seems like, well, especially with the age of social media and everybody just taking pictures of themselves dressed up and things like that, it seems to have a lot more socially acceptable now.
Yeah. So the convention itself is, what are the dates?
April 21st to the 23rd.
So not
Okay.
this weekend, but the next one.
Yeah. Well, it'll be the coming weekend when we watch. So
For sure.
what would people expect to see if they were to attend this year's Sci-Fi on the Rock convention?
What wouldn't they see? There's going to be a sea of costumes.
Yes.
We have 2 different costume contests that run over the weekend. We've got one for kids on the Saturday, the 22nd. So if your kid has a costume and they want to dress up and parade through the convention, come on down.
Yep.
And then we've got our main costume contest for, I think it's like ages 12 and up.
I believe so,
for
yeah.
costumes, and that's like the big production.
That happens on a Sunday, and that's when a lot of people come out just because you'll see some pretty big costumes.
Yeah.
And you
the
see some
costumes.
cool stuff.
You see some
The
really
talent on the
cool
island
stuff.
is insane.
Yeah,
It's pretty remarkable.
It is. I mean, we have a lot of bad weather, so I understand that people have a lot of time on their hands to like put their. But I mean, we've had like orcs. People made orcs out of foam,
Yeah.
and they're like 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
And the person in it is not 8 feet tall, so it's amazing.
Thankfully.
Yeah, really.
I mean, that's a serious mutation there.
Yeah, but not only that, we have like workshops.
Yeah.
We have like writers and stuff like that that come in and do workshops. We have game rooms and things like that. We have a retro room where people, like a group is putting off a retro room. You come in and you look at the old computers and games and stuff from back in
Oh, cool.
the
That's
80s
interesting.
and the 90s. Oh, I'm very interested in
Yeah,
it, but
yeah.
I'm 100 years old. So.
Yeah. So this coming weekend, from the time that we see, people can go to Sci-Fi on the Rock. They can see these things. They can get immersed in a culture, which is very inclusive, very welcoming, and it's got a real community feel. Where would people go to get more information, or if they wanted to get tickets to attend? Where would they find this stuff?
And we've got all of our stuff on our website. It's just sci-fiontherock.com. We're also on Instagram. I think it's at SFOTR.
Yep.
That. Facebook as well. We've got like 2 different Facebook pages. We're everywhere.
Well, Kit, David, I hope you get a massive turnout at this year's convention, and I hope you continue to do all of the things for our community that you do. And also, I'm glad that you provide a space that is inclusive and safe for people who might not know. There's a whole bunch of other people who like all of the same stuff that you do. So go, have fun, be happy, let it fly, because like, what else are you gonna do? Be miserable for the rest of your life? So thank you guys very much for coming out, and we will be right back after this. And welcome back to Out of the Fog, a great show discussing a bunch of wonderful things that wonderful people do in and around our communities, and most of it revolves around volunteerism. Volunteer Week. Speaking of volunteerism and volunteers, cue a camera switch. This is Julia Perry. Julia, you are the volunteer coordinator for Rogers Television.
Yes, I have an awesome job to be the volunteer coordinator here at Rogers Television.
Yeah, I'm not sure everybody knows how much volunteerism happens to put off basically everything that Rogers TV does.
Yes, we like to say that volunteers are the backbone of Rogers TV. And we have volunteers involved with all of our programs. If it's in the studio, if it's in the field. Shout out to volunteers that are helping with the regatta for like 30 hours.
like you're live for like 10, 12, 15, 16 hours
Yes.
of television. It's a long time, and it's all
it's a
run by
lot.
volunteers.
It's all run by volunteers for the most part, you know, except for our director or our station manager. But, you know, it's 30 plus volunteers for that day. In the studio here on our weekly basis doing Out of the Fog, we have volunteers doing floor directing, graphics, doing switching cameras, audio.
Hosting.
And hosting. A
Yeah.
special happy volunteer week to you, Jason.
Oh, thank you. And to my fellow co-hosts all across Rogers, and also that Memorial Hockey Tournament that we're talking about. We're going to broadcast that across Rogers. Also
Exactly.
produced by...
Oh my goodness, so many volunteers, because our Rogers TV across the province is involved with that as well. And in case people didn't know, we have offices in Gander, Grand Falls, and Corner Brook. Shout out to Roger Robinson out there, and all their great volunteers are helping out. And if you want to volunteer with Rogers TV in St. John's.
Yeah, because because we make a lot of stuff with a lot of volunteerism now, doesn't mean that there isn't room for other people to be able to lend a hand.
Exactly, there's always room, because you know, there's so many different programs, so many different things that are going on, and we need volunteers different times during the week. Sometimes if you're not available in the daytime, there's weeknights that are
So if you want to volunteer,
you can go to rogerstv.com and you select the region that you're interested in. There's a drop down up in the corner for St. John's, Gander, Grand Falls, and Corner Brook, and we're always looking for volunteers. And it's a great chance to experience television production.
yeah, to get in it and to see how it works.
It's exciting.
I mean, it can definitely be exciting. I will say that it is oftentimes exciting.
It's very exciting, and we have volunteers that have been working here for, you know, like 15 years. I have one volunteer, he just turned 80, and he still does floor directing for Out of the Fog on Thursday nights. And I mean, you know, we have awesome people like that. And then the other day in the studio, we had someone that was 12 years old that was interested in television production. He was the son of one of our previous volunteers that came in to see what's going on. So it's all age groups.
So, I mean, we got credits and everything already,
Yes,
Julia?
and the
So I guess that's the end of our show. We had a lot to say and a lot to talk about when it comes to volunteerism. If you want to volunteer for Rogers TV all across the province, go to rogerstv.com and check out the Paradise Double Ice Complex. And I mean, what a great show.
Yes.
Can we just hang out for another couple of minutes?
Happy Volunteer Week to all of our awesome volunteers.
Happy Volunteer Week.
Yes, and volunteers in general.
Yeah, and we'll see y'all next week. New people making new shows.
Yes, awesome.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
If you have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team